it to my ears every time. Gear Candy.
Dude, so real quick, we always do a little segment on the show that we call Gear Candy. It's one of our favorites. It's for the more like creative and maybe like tech-minded end of the spectrum, so that it gives us a chance to kind of, if we want to go there, get in those, gear weeds, so to speak. We as musicians and producers, gear is a component, right? It's not about the gear, but it's about how you use it. But sometimes it is also about the gear and what it means to
Right.
you, and it can tend to be its own inspiration. So what, if anything, would be your kind of like one desert island piece of gear that really drives you creatively in your process and what you do?
Yeah, if we're going with hardware, I love the mic that I'm using. I'm using the Lewitt LCT 1040, and it's basically a large diaphragm condenser. But what's cool about this mic, and not to get too like promo-y or anything, but it's just a really cool concept because it is an FET mic and a tube mic, and it's got this big home station where you can swap between FET mode or tube mode. And within that, you've got these different sound character modules, and they're analog. They're not like DSP or anything like that. So you've got like a warm tube, a saturated tube, a dark tube. And by having all of that in one microphone, it just helps me kind of keep my space a little more tidy. I've got a bunch of microphones in my closet, but since I got this thing, it's typically all I'll need, because if I'm doing guitar, I can set it to one mode. If I'm recording female vocals, I can set it to one mode. And it's just nice to kind of have that all in one little home station and one microphone on one stand in my room. So if you're somebody who works with a lot of different musical styles or different vocalists, and you've been looking for one kind of workhorse microphone, I think you can get a lot of different options with that. And again, the less setup time that something takes, the more I can just dive into the creativity. If I had to make a second choice, it would be like my Roland 106, like the 1984 version that I have sitting over here. I love it. I did a lot of the Riley album on that synth, and it's weird. It's like almost cheap sounding because it's so old, but I just love it. Like, it's one of the most classic synths of all time. It's on almost every record I do in some way or another.
Yeah. I mean, those are two phenomenal pieces, and they speak so highly to, especially, the genre that you work in the workflow, right? So, make pop music, you're making pop music to, like, so much of that, especially with an album like Riley's that we talked about on the full episode, right? It's a very vocal forward thing, right? It's like, it's the artist on top of everything. So that's your, spend the time and resources. And if, it ever comes down to it, even ultimately the money, where you're going to get, the most benefit out of it. Right. And for pop, make sure your vocalist sounds good. They're the storyteller, and they're probably a lot of times the highest thing in the mix. You know what I mean?
100%.
So yeah, exactly. And then beyond that, to fill out so much of it is about striking a tone, right? As you mentioned, and really making sure that overall, tone and characteristic of even a simple idea is kind of nailing it. And something like the 106 is a workhorse when it comes to that.
And it has that built-in vibe, if you will, just because it is what it is.
It's instant vibe. It's simple enough where I don't sit there and fiddle with it for an hour, right? So I've got other synths, like I've got a Polybrew over here from Arturia, and it's a new synth. And I can spend hours on that thing just coming up with weird patches and weird presets, and you kind of get lost in it. But with the Juno, it's like 2 oscillators and a sub. You've got square, you've got saw, you've got triangle. Other than that, do you want chorus 1 or 2? And then adjust your envelopes. And like, that's all you get.
Yeah.
And there's something that's so pure about just like diving in, nailing a sound, and just going with it. It's just like, set it, commit it, and forget it.
It's totally the synth embodiment of less is more, and sometimes, like, it's not about having every tool. We say this a lot. It's not about having every tool you could ever possibly buy. It's about knowing and being able to use the few that you like really well. And that's why you keep coming back to it, because it's not like it's the only synth out there. It's not like there haven't been, updates in synth technology by companies. And we love the Arturia stuff is awesome, right? But yeah, it's like sometimes you can have option paralysis that make you want to be like, I don't know, if I even touch that thing, I know I'll be sitting there with an hour fiddling with something, and it'll become more about the sound and the choices in that than it is about the choices for the song, and I think that's a really great point, a really great reason to have something like that sitting right there off camera. I think.
Yeah, it's right over here. I can send a picture if you guys ever want to post that.
Would love that.
I'd love it. Yeah, and send us a picture of the mic as well, because that's a powerful combo in making what you create, dude.
I think too, one of the things about is like I'm pretty in the box, especially with mixing stuff. I don't have like any analog compressors or anything, but specifically for me for synths, it's just like, yeah, I can get the almost identical sounds from something like Arturia, but just a tactical feel of like being able to play with it. Especially if I make so much music. I'm like very regimented, like 10 to 6, go in here, create. It feels like a job for me. And I love that. But sometimes just having that like fun, almost playground vibe of turning knobs and shifting oscillators, it's just something that I don't get if I'm like clicking with my mouse through Arturia or through Serum. And sometimes I need that. I need to get away from my computer and like use my hands.
This is why one of my favorite things, and we do this, I mean, we get down and dirty at the studio and have with plenty of projects. I know Tom does, where it's just with analog pedals, right? This is why, as a guitar player, I've come up and loved that part of the studio and creating. And that was my entrance into technology. It wasn't like all the other studio gear. It was the knobs on my friggin' pedal board that I was like, oh, I can like play and in real time fuck with these, and then extrapolate that idea to any other piece of analog gear. And it really starts to feel that same way. And you're just like, well, can I make this move like performatively in real time instead of trying to like automate with some lines and like program, a plugin to do it. And that, I think, opens up a whole new world of appreciation for sound building and sound design even, right? I know
100%.
We have so many friends that are absolute animals when it comes to sound design and are doing things in Serum with wavetables. One of my friend Derek Atwater, Agent Method, does a ton of stuff in that world that
he's worked on our packs. Yep.
Dude, that constantly blows my mind. And I'm just like, and when we do stuff together, I'm just like, yo, that is amazing. That is awesome that you can do this and have the discipline, but he's been doing it for so long that he has that workflow. And especially even if it's in the box dialed in, but even he'll tell you, it's like, if it's like there comes a time and a place, like you just got to like perform it in the real world. You know what I mean?
100%.
And his partner does everything like with Harp, and the music that she makes is wild. So it's the best marriage, quite literally and philosophically, of both of those worlds. And I think that's where someone like you really hits in appreciating both of those, for a good workflow.
100%.
It's awesome, man. Dude, this has been great. We can't thank you enough. This will far and away be a banner episode. I'm so sure of it, dude.
Music to my